welcome to CDH Conversations podcast. I am Nastascha Harduth. I'm a director at Cliffe Dekker Hofmeyr, where I head up its corporate debt, turnaround and restructuring sector. I am joined here today by Tebello Mosoeu, who is a senior associate in the dispute resolution practice with a speciality in insolvency and restructuring. Welcome, Tebello.
Thank you for inviting me, Nastascha. That's right. You have over 15 years of experience in navigating complex insolvency and restructuring proceedings across various industries and jurisdictions. I am a much newer entrant with only 5 years under my belt.
Thank you for setting the scene, Tebello, and for pointing out our age difference, our experience difference. Let's start by asking you what led you to this profession.
Thank you, Nastascha. I think for me, the stars aligned and I ended up in the insolvency and in the restructuring profession. Early on in my career, I was partnered with a director who was heavily involved in restructuring and insolvency matters, but we found that we were often entering into the conversation when the company was already distressed and it had created shareholder disputes. And that led me to thinking that perhaps if we had entered the conversation sooner, that things might be different. From then on, I decided to make a pivot to focus more on restructuring rather than insolvency.
I find it interesting to hear that, because a lot of people have actually told me that the insolvency and restructuring profession found them rather than them seeking it out actively. And for me personally, that is true as well. I started my articles in 2008, and it was a great year. We were very busy because the global economic crisis hit us. When I did my commercial rotation in 2009, we were dead quiet, so I chose to go back to insolvency practice. And then the 2008 Companies Act became effective in 2011. So I was still a baby associate at that point. And so I kind of grew up with business rescue, and I've evolved as it has evolved. And again, the profession chose me. I didn't choose it.
Do you have any particularly memorable experiences from your career that have really helped shape you and have been very significant to you?
Yes, I have one from very early on as a first-year candidate attorney.
Okay.
I had to go to court, and anybody who has been to the Johannesburg High Court knows that the route from where you may find parking to the court is riddled with obstacles like street vendors and vagrants. And so I was scared to death, and I probably looked as if I was scared to death, because what seemed to be an inebriated vagrant lunged at me and tried to kiss me, which was startling to say the least.
Yeah.
But when I took a step back, I realized that he didn't try that with anybody else. He tried it with me. And if you're going to act like a lamb, you are going to be slaughtered. And so the next time I went to court, I walked as if I owned the streets. I chose not to be a lamb. I chose to be an elephant stomping my way to court. And I've never had any other problems after that. And so that was a big life lesson, that you have to enter a room with confidence. But more recently, and I guess more meaningfully, is where I was involved in the restructuring of an airline. And because of all the numerous stakeholder engagements we had on MS Teams, one of the air hostesses recognized me, and she came to me and said, and this was after the restructuring, unfortunately, for reasons outside of the company's control, didn't work out, came to me and said, "Thank you for buying us more time, because otherwise I would have not had a job for 2 years." Gave me time to find solutions. And that gave me a lot of meaning and a lot of purpose. And I seek that out now in every restructuring and insolvency mandate that I have.
Wow, that's really special.
What significant experience have you had in your long and illustrious 5-year career?
Well, moving to CDH and working with you, of course.
Of course.
Early on in my career, I was involved in the winding up of a mutual bank.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, of course, came the task of making recoveries on its debt book.
Yeah.
And in doing so, I, was exposed to a number of, entities with various corporate structures and in different stages of solvency and liquidity. And that, of course, made me have to learn on my feet how the various strategies that we can use to make those recoveries.
So I guess that also was quite meaningful and purposeful for you because it's a mutual bank. So there were a lot of people that kind of lost their life savings and which you helped to recover.
Yes, of course. I think finding that meaning in this profession is always important, and having a why, having a reason for doing it is absolutely significant. And in my history, as brief as it might be, that's been very important. But, stepping away from the past and looking forward into the future, what are some of the current trends that you're seeing in insolvency and restructuring that you think that we should be on the lookout for?
So I think that a hot topic in the world and in our profession at the moment is generative AI. I think that insofar as the restructuring and insolvency field is concerned, what generative AI is going to do is going to help with data analytics, identifying distress a lot sooner. And the sooner you identify distress, the more runway a company has to fix the problem. So I think it could, if used properly, lead to more efficient and effective restructuring mandates.
I personally hope that this new technology will result in a trend towards proactive restructuring, where companies have regular financial health checks and take early action to resolve financial issues before they become critical and perhaps even overwhelming. But on that, what are your thoughts on the impact of economic cycles in restructuring?
So there's definitely more restructuring and insolvency mandates during economic downturns. But during times of economic growth and economic buoyancy, there's as many restructurings and insolvencies because companies are mismanaged in the good times and in the bad times. I think that the quality of the restructuring is probably better during times of economic growth and buoyancy because there's more money in the system to solve the issues. And so you find that instead of a restructuring being a controlled wind down, it becomes an operational restructuring where growth is anticipated. And so the quality is better during times of economic upturns.
Yep.
How do you see the future of insolvency and restructuring profession?
So I think that you've hit on something quite important with the discussion on technology. I think that the future will show greater integration of technology with especially an emphasis on sustainability. And of course, being that we do live in a global environment, an increased collaboration between or across borders as well. I think that the industry has survived and will survive across the various changing economic landscapes and environments and the ever-changing regulatory landscapes as well. And I think that professionals will need to learn to adapt and be agile in order to navigate these changes. On that note, talking about the professionals, what advice do you have for aspiring entrants into the insolvency and restructuring profession?
Wow, how long do we have, Tebello? So I think that it's important for anybody who enters the insolvency and restructuring profession to find a network and to find a person that will mentor, guide them, and be their sponsor.
Absolutely.
And what I mean with that is I think that it is critical that you find somebody who will teach you, invest time in you, and guide you along your path, but who will also act as your sponsor in rooms where you aren't present. And I think that is probably the most critical path to success in the insolvency and restructuring profession. And I can say with my hand on my heart that I was very blessed to have such a mentor very early on in my career. But seeing that you've entered the profession more recently than I have, what advice would you give?
So I absolutely agree with you that mentorship and support networks are absolutely vital to career growth. I think that in addition to that, I think it's important that any new entrant get as much of a solid foundation as possible and to prepare them to stay resilient and prepare them for any challenges that they might face. I also think that it's very important to seize every opportunity that you can to learn from your mentors, as well as to upskill yourself. That's vital.
So once you have the foundation, Tebello, tell me how does your generation stay up to date with the latest developments in the insolvency and restructuring profession?
Well, I think much in the same way that your generation would as well. I think that it's important to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the industry. You can do that by reading industry publications, attending conferences, and most of all, I cannot encourage networking enough. I think that participating in webinars, creating contacts with other professionals in the field who are also involved in different areas of the field can help keep you informed about latest trend and best practice in the profession as well.
I think that's a great approach, Tebello, but I would add that I think being a member of a professional organization like the South African Restructuring and Insolvency Practitioners Association or the Turnaround Management Association is also crucial, because that is easy entrance into growing your network. You have like-minded professionals who can share their experiences. And so, notwithstanding the more formal learning opportunities that these organizations present, it's also a matter of growing your network, understanding who operates within your profession, and also shared experiences and learnings.
So I have something that might be something of a controversial question, but picture this. You have arrived, you're in the insolvency profession, you are brand new, and you need the keys to success. So in your perspective, with the years of experience that you have, what is the secret to success in this field?
So beyond finding purpose, and we've spoken quite a bit about that, I think that because this profession isn't a walk in the park, you have difficult stakeholders, you have struggling companies, resilience is absolutely key. Additionally, I would say that effective communication is very important, so that you know how to communicate your message to the various stakeholders.
And, as a director, obviously you have years of experience. As a director, do you find that that's one of the main roles that you play?
So I think one of the biggest challenges for people in our profession, in the insolvency and restructuring profession, is probably stakeholder management, because restructuring and insolvency, for that matter, involves very difficult decisions that will impact a lot of stakeholders, and you have to try and manage those interests of the stakeholders with the continued viability of the company, if in the case of a restructuring, of course. And so I found that the way to best manage stakeholders is not to manage them at all. It's to take them on a journey with you, so that they can see and appreciate the obstacles that the company is facing. They can see the peaks and the valleys, and ultimately, hopefully, they can also see the beautiful views when it's over, right? What has been your biggest challenge as a senior associate, Tebello?
Gosh, that's a good question. Well, as a junior attorney and as being involved in the insolvency and restructuring field, I think that it's always difficult to make tough decisions and to have the confidence to make tough decisions. And so I think that's why it's so important to surround yourself with networks of mentors and colleagues who are experienced in the field and can guide you whenever you need it.
Yeah. Thank you, Tebello. That was very interesting. I enjoyed having you on the podcast. As the saying goes, challenges is what makes life interesting. Overcoming them is what makes life meaningful. Thank you for joining us for another episode of CDH Conversations, and we hope that this podcast will give you some perspective on how generational attitudes shape the way we work, collaborate, and participate in the insolvency and restructuring field.
The views and information expressed are those of the contributors at the time of publication and do not necessarily present those of the firm. All content is provided for general purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. We make no representations, warranties, or guarantees, whether expressed or implied, that the content on our podcast is accurate, complete, up-to-date, or reflects the current law. We accept no responsibility for any loss or damage, whether direct or consequential, arising from reliance on the information which is presented here.